Let me know if you guys can see my screen. Yeah, awesome. Okay, let me go ahead and present. Awesome, great. So welcome everybody. My name is Monica Rojas. I am the Membership and Inclusion Specialist for Tech Hub South Florida. And we're super excited to have Victor here, Victor Tree, who's the Senior Director of Education at New Horizons. And today's Lunch and Learns topic is Intro to ITIL version 4 Services Value Chain. Never heard of that, but I'm super excited to dive into that. It's definitely a new topic, but it will be recorded and posted on YouTube. So for those of you guys who don't know about Tech Hub, our ultimate mission is to build South Florida into a Tech Hub. So it's in our name, it's in every community coffee, it's in every presentation we give, and we make sure that all of our community members are involved, right? So this is our community creed. We really try to create a welcoming, collaborative, and inclusive community for everybody. So if you guys ever have any questions about inclusivity or getting involved, and we also, or reach out to me, and we also really encourage our community not to sell each other, but rather to collaborate, right? So create partnerships, use each other's services and just help each other out, because in the end, it'll just flourish or help our community flourish a little bit better. And also, if you want to learn a little bit more about Tech Hub, feel free to check out techhubsouthflorida.org. It's at the bottom. So this is actually just an overview on who we are. We are a nonprofit, and we are membership driven. So right now we have about 200 plus corporate members throughout South Florida, and that includes Miami-Dade, includes Broward and Palm Beach. And we really try to work on creating events and programs throughout the region, right? Whether it's virtually, now we're starting to get into in-person events, and making sure our community is aware of who else is in the community, right? Okay, so these are just a few of our current members. Definitely some familiar face or some familiar names here: Office Depot, UKG, City Furniture. These are all some of just the members that have helped us develop our efforts throughout the years. All right, so this is a little bit more about our membership. We really try to focus on diversifying our offerings. That way everybody can find some benefits, and that includes our weekly newsletter every Monday that has about 16,000 subscribers. We have member profiles for people like New Horizons who want to get their name out and start being involved in the community. We also support talent. So we have job listings, resume distributions on our website, and that's under the talent tab. And we really like to give speaking opportunities to a lot of our members. So whether it's today in our Lunch and Learn, whether it's our Monday Night Tech Talks, we really try to get your name out there and educate on what's going on, right? So we also do a lot of PR support, which includes guest blogs and member spotlights. And internally, within the membership, we do have exclusive peer groups and exclusive events for members only. So again, if you have any questions, check out techhubsouthflorida.org. Email me, email Nikki, and we're happy to help however we can. So going back to what I was mentioning about our events, we do have 4 main events that we do on a weekly cadence, and every Monday night we do Tech Talks, and they will be in person. So if you guys check out our website, you'll be able to see there's a link to the Eventbrite, and it'll let you know who's speaking, where it's at, what's the topic all about. And then our community coffees are more of a panel discussion, and this is bi-weekly, right? On Tuesday mornings at 8 a.m., we bring in local business leaders, and our next one is going to be on venture capital in South Florida, which is a hot topic for our startup members. And then we also do a podcast. So this was actually started during the pandemic. We really highlight innovative people that are building South Florida Tech's community. And then last but not least, we do our Friday Lunch and Learns, where we try to educate our community. And we're super excited to have Victor here, who will be doing that today. One second. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so this is the resume distributor that I mentioned earlier. So if any of you guys are looking for other jobs, feel free to submit your resume there, and your info will be sent out to all of our supporting members. And yeah, so we also have a Slack channel. It's techhubsouthflorida.org/Slack. So feel free to email this number below, and you'll be able to join our Slack channel. That has about 4,000 people right now. So it's super engaged, and you'll be up to date on what we're doing as well. All right. So that's it from my end. Victor, I'm super pumped to pass the screen or pass the mic over to you. Feel free to share your screen. And we'll get
Fantastic. I will
started
do
here.
that. Thank you.
Yeah, of
All
course.
righty. Well, good day, everybody. As Monica said, my name is Victor Treat. I work for New Horizons of South Florida. I'm really jazzed to be here. I heard about Tech Hub when I first started working at South Florida New Horizons. One of my coworkers, my fellow instructors, a gentleman by the name of David Winters, talked briefly about it. And when management approached me about if there was a topic, I'm always excited to talk about ITIL. And so I threw up the topic and, well, Monica's been great with helping me get in and get going on this. Just real briefly about New Horizons in general, and then the South Florida office itself. New Horizons is a global leader in IT training, one of the largest training providers in the world with offices in over 300 locations globally. Quite a bit of it's here in North America, and the South Florida office has been a real leader in some of the things that are going on within New Horizons. I am jazzed to be working with them. I started back at the beginning of the year. I've been with New Horizons in a different location for more than 20 years now, and got invited to shift over to South Florida, and I'm excited about that. There are basically kind of two prongs with which the office is working on. One is a business-to-business approach where we are providing training to a particular business, whether it be on Azure products from Microsoft or doing Excel classes, the whole gamut of Amazon Web Services, SQL database servers, all those IT type things that we might administer or use as end users. There's also then a consumer side of things where we have individuals from the community who are looking to maybe either change careers or up their skill set so they can advance in their careers in the world of IT. And that's the particular program that I'm most heavily involved with, helping individuals. And we have at present a lot of night classes going on that go for quite a bit of time, where our goal is to not only educate, but then help those individuals in the community who want to make that career change, get the certifications necessary to break into the IT world, or again, to up their skill set to advance in their career. My particular area of specialty is in ITIL. I've been doing ITIL for more than 15 years now. And the topic I want to talk about is dealing with the new version 4, and very specifically, a part of it called the service value chain. Just a little bit more about me. I actually live in Houston. So you talk about inclusivity. You were including Texas in your gig today. So I think that's great inclusivity. I love it. And I'm really jazzed about the South Florida area. One of the reasons why I reached out and then got on board, because I see a lot of momentum in the greater Miami area. And I'm only seeing more of that with the interaction I'm having with the New Horizons management and team, as well as then some of the organizations and businesses in the area. So I'm excited. I've been to Miami a couple of times. When I was younger, I was like, ooh, Miami, no. But when I finally got there, Little Havana, Ocean View Drive, and of course, y'all have all seen my hotel, right? Hotel Victor. Off peak is when I'm going there. What a great hotel. But anyway, so let's dive in. I am actually a senior technical instructor. I wish they promote me to director of education. I think somewhere there was an error in translation there. I would love to be directing education, but I actually prefer to be in the classroom. So my technical description is senior technical instructor. I've been training people on IT for more than 2 decades now, and I've been having a blast ever since. So I'm going to go ahead and dive in now. And if y'all don't mind, if you'll indulge me, I'm going to turn off my video only because it distracts me, and I want to stay focused on the task at hand here. So what the heck is ITIL? ITIL is a framework of best practices, and it comes out of the UK, thus the Union Jack their flag. It's a set of best practices to help us in the IT world and IT service management deliver the services that our user and our business community needs to do their work. And we break it down into basically 2 parts, 2 products and services, right? And on the, okay, I'm having fun with Zoom today. I was mentioning to Monica before we got started, I'm doing a class today, and Zoom has not been behaving for me. And I'm afraid it's not behaving now for me. And I don't know what. Oh, yeah. Okay. So there we go. Now it's moving. So products versus services. I'm not going to talk about the products here. You can read that. But the services I do want to touch on briefly here. And that is, and this is an interesting definition. I love this definition. It's been something we've used in ITIL since version 2. A service is a means of enabling value co-creation by enabling the services that the customer wants and needs without them having to worry about the costs and the risks. It's that enabling of value co-creation. And the best way I can describe this without getting into the world of IT and bogged down in all the IT stuff is when you go to a restaurant, let's say you don't like tomatoes on your sandwich. Well, if you don't tell the wait staff to leave the tomatoes off, shame on you when the sandwich comes out with tomatoes. That's your fault for not helping create the value. Now, on the other hand, if the wait staff, you tell them you don't like tomatoes, but yet they still leave them on there, well, then shame on them. The two of us, the customer and the wait staff, have to work together to co-create that value proposition of what it is you're looking for when you go to that restaurant. Well, the same thing applies to our IT services. Now, we also talk about something called service management. Service management is simply a set of specialized organizational capabilities. All the different IT staff, as well as then the vendors that help support that staff, and all the skills necessary to do what we need to do, we manage all that, and that's what service management is. Now, in regards to ITIL and its framework, there is a governing body for ITIL called Excelos. They're based out of the UK. Originally, this came out of the UK government. I'll get into that in just a minute. And they drive what these best practices are. There's also a certification body entity called PeopleCert. And when you go to get certified in some of the ITIL certifications, you would be going through PeopleCert. Okay? And PeopleCert, both PeopleCert and Excelos are based in Europe, but they are both very responsive and very helpful whenever you communicate with them. So before I dive into that service value chain thing, I want to explain a couple of things. And I want to kind of give you an idea of the history of ITIL so that you can see where it's been and therefore understand what they're driving up the service value chain and then where we're going. Okay. And by the way, I didn't mention this earlier. Monica and I talked about this before we got going. If you have any questions about some of the things I'm talking about, pop into chat, hit her with the question in the chat, and she'll interrupt me and ask those questions. So don't hesitate. Right? I would rather that we stop and explain something at the moment rather than me keep going and wait till the end when it's out of context at that point. So let's go back to the 1980s. Remember the 1980s? Remember Miami Vice and Duran Duran, right? Her name was Rio. Oh, don't do that, Victor. No. Well, back in the 1980s, the UK government looked around at all the things that are going on in IT services. We had mainframes back then, and we had this little thing called MS-DOS, and Apple products were beginning to come out. Well, the UK government looked around and said, well, we don't have any standards for how IS, information services, or more nowadays IT, information technology, works. So they came out with ITIL. Now, they didn't call it version 1. We don't call things version 1 the first time we're doing them typically. I mean, how many of us refer to it as our first wife or first husband or first spouse, right? I mean, that's the only one we've ever had. Okay? I do have some friends that do that, but they do it to get a rise out of people. And because the UK was part of the European Union, this began in the 1990s to spread into the rest of Europe. These best practices, this framework. And of course, we all remember the 90s, right? You've got mail, good old AOL. And then, of course, who can forget Netscape? And then there was this little tiny company where you could get computer books from, something called, what was it? Amazon. Of course, we've seen what Amazon's turned into today. And over the course of the 90s, the people who create ITIL realized, we're kind of scattered here. We need to condense this down. So in early 2000, they came out with version 2. And version 2 really kind of slimmed things down a little bit, made it much more concise, and gave us a lot better best practices, even better. And also reacting to the changes in the IT world. We're no longer doing MS-DOS and mainframes. We're doing AOL and other things like that. And this is when ITIL begins to spread, not only from the EU, but for the rest of the world. And it comes across the pond to the United States. And so companies like 3M and Target and Procter & Gamble, just as examples, start getting really heavily into ITIL as well. Procter & Gamble in particular did a lot of metrics on this, and they noticed some significant improvements in their cost-benefit analysis by implementing ITIL, version 2 that is, and seeing how it improved their operations. Now, in the early 2000s, of course, we are talking about Crackberries and flip phones. Sorry, Blackberries. That was bad on my part. I apologize. But the version 2 had some kind of issues to it and that need to be corrected. And so version 3 comes out in 2007. And what version 3 did was condense it down even further. And in the bottom right-hand corner, I've given you a graphic of the box set of the 5 books that make up the library, because ITIL, it actually stands for the IT Infrastructure Library. It's a set of books where all these best practices have been written out. And so we have these 5 books now. By the way, that box set, when it came out brand new, $750. They were proud of their books, but they're beautiful. I've got the box set myself, and it's beautiful written books, and it's nice. It's good. This version 3 now comes out, and I've added, hopefully y'all can see the graphic. It was kind of light. It goes into what we call a life cycle approach now. And it gets even more focused on, now we have a strategic focus, then we go to a design focus, and then we go to a transition focus into the live operational environment. And then we start looking to continually improve things. This was huge. And it really made some massive differences in the way IT looked at the world and the way IT looked at the way they were doing things, the deployments, the services they were doing, the various components of what made up. Now, in 2011, they came out with a slightly different edition where they corrected some wording, some verbiage. They more normalized the English to be global English as opposed to UK English. One of the challenges I had in version 2 was teaching people British English. I mean, a laboratory, vitamins, what are those exactly? So version 3 takes off like gangbusters now. Now, whether it's the original version or version 2 or version 3, ITIL applies to just about anything in the world of IT, whether it's a private company, it's a government entity, or it's a nonprofit. Makes no difference. It can be a large global company with 100,000 employees. It could be a medium-sized company with 1,000 employees, or it could be a small company with maybe 50 employees. Makes no difference. These best practices are designed to be applied across all of that. Now, what else happened in 2007? There was this little thing, and you might be familiar with it. If you're not, I apologize for referencing something that you might not be aware of. But there was this thing called an iPhone, a smartphone. And then a little while later, a couple of years later, we get this iPad. Wicked stuff. Now, I want you to stop and think, if you can, for a second, about what the world was like prior to those 2 tools. And of course, I don't mean to promote Apple products here. Obviously, the Galaxies and the Samsung and the Microsoft Surface tablet, right? And all the other things that have come out since then. Think about how radical that has changed the world. The iPhone and the smartphone and the iPad, the tablet. That's pretty radical. And then we throw in some other technology, the cloud, Dropbox, Google Docs, Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, Office 365, and the like. And think about how that all of this has radically transformed the way we do our work now. As an IT professional, as an IT manager, I'm looking at this going, okay, what? They don't have a desktop anymore? I have no control over that desktop anymore? Or their files are in the cloud? Where's that? It's not in a server here at the office? And that's changing the way we react to things. And then if you're familiar with this, there's 2 technologies or 2 frameworks out there also. And I've added those to slide on the far right there. Something called Agile and something else called DevOps. Now, these are two additional frameworks that are complementary to ITIL. They're not exclusive or in competition with, and they're both more focused on the development of applications and systems that we will then deploy and operate. And they're much more about bang, 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 let's go, move it, let's get things done. Let's respond more quickly to the changing business world. So in 2019, we get version 4. It's not an admission that ITIL's bad. No, what it is it's saying, hey, the best practices need to adjust to the changing business world. And that's where we are today. So that's kind of our history, where we've been, where we're going, and how technology changes, and how ITIL is adapting with that and modifying its adjustments. And that takes us then to the new framework. And this new framework really turned things upside down on its head, got away from that hierarchy of strategy, design, transition, operation, and continual improvement to this service value system here that we see. And on the far left of the service value system, we're trying to really distill down what we're doing in the IT world and the way to think about things. We look at opportunity and demand. What's out there? What are the opportunities that afforded us? How might we make a difference in the business or in the overall provision of services? And is there demand for something? I mean, how many of you knew you needed Uber and Lyft or DoorDash or Uber Eats? And yet somebody understood there was an opportunity there and the demand would come. Now we could flip that, and there's demand for stuff. There's a lot of things I'm demanding from the internet but aren't there yet. And somehow I need to figure out how to do that, right? So we have this whole concept of what's out there in the world and how might that impact us? And as an IT shop, how do we adjust? And I've tried to add some descriptions. I'm not going to read these descriptions to you precisely. I've thrown them on here just so that if you want to take the time to read, you're more than welcome to. But then we get into the 5 different elements here in the middle that make up the service value system. The first one at the top is something we call the guiding principles. And on the next slide, I'm going to show you those briefly. So hang on a second. At the bottom, we see something called continual improvement. Now, both of these, the guiding principles and the continual improvement, they are a mindset, the way we really ideally should be looking at the world. Continual improvement is about not setting still, of constantly looking for ways to get better. The moment you sit still is the moment you're falling behind. And I'm going to use something that might be a bit of a sensitive topic for those of you in Miami. There's this guy, he plays this pro game. It's, what is it, basketball? Some guy named LeBron James. Y'all may be familiar with him, maybe? I don't know. Maybe he brought a world championship to you. Well, LeBron James is arguably one of the greatest players of all time. He's not as good as Michael Jordan or Wilt Chamberlain, but close. But I promise you, even though he's getting to the latter part of his career after being at 4 different cities, 2 of them, 1 of them twice, he's still trying to improve his game because he knows that if he doesn't, the young whippersnappers coming up are going to take the game away from him. So he's constantly looking to improve. Well, so should we in everything endeavor we do. And in something like Tech Hub, where y'all are sharing information and trying to create that community, that's a continual improvement concept for sure. Anyway, so there's 2 other items here before we get to that service value chain. Governance, which is all about our policies and helping us understand our appropriate behaviors within our organization, our expense policies and the like that govern our behavior. And there's something down at the bottom called practices, which I'll explain in a moment as well. But the heart of what I want to talk about here in just a few moments is the service value chain. And that's really the meat of our activities in IT and how we get over here to the far right, the value proposition. How do I, as an IT professional, providing IT services, add value to the organization? How do I give my organization a competitive advantage? Whether that organization is a for-profit company or it's a government agency that needs to do a better job for the taxpayer, maybe the DOD. I've done a ton of training over the years for the DOD and ITIL. They are heavily invested in this concept of ITIL framework so they can be all that they can be. Or a nonprofit. I do a lot of work with the healthcare industry and they're using ITIL. So this value proposition is about us in IT helping facilitate the business being of what we do that much better. Now, a couple things I want to look at here real quickly. The guiding principles. There are 7 guiding principles here. Again, that's that outer shell as a mindset. Now, these are not just IT things. These are things that you can implement in your own life. Focus on value, start where you are, progress iteratively, feedback. They're catchy phrases, but there's some real super smart things that are going on with all 7 of these. And all 7 of these can be applied to our day in and day out lives and business operations, et cetera. We could do a whole class on just the 7 guiding principles here as a mindset in the way that you need to look at the world and how you should proceed through your day-to-day activities. Anyway, so the next thing I want to talk about briefly are the practices, because I'm going to mention these throughout the rest of my conversation with you about the service value chain. The practices down here at the bottom, there are 35 different practices within ITIL. And I've listed a few of them on the left here. Things like incident management, problem management, change enablement. If you're in IT, some of these terms are familiar to you. If you're not an IT professional, that's okay. We'll get you eventually. You'll come over to the bright side of the world eventually. These are areas where we're going to focus on certain activities to do them even better. We have an objective in each one of these that we need to accomplish. We are triggered by something that's going on, and we do a couple of steps to make them work. But all these practices will be to do this service value chain. It's at the middle, a set of activities. And all of this is focused on, again, that value proposition over on the far right there. It's all about the value proposition over on the far right. And the service value chain is going to help us get there. So before we dive in and flow through this service value chain, let's talk about each of the elements of it. And I'll breathe here for a second in case anybody has any questions so far. Okay. Now, notice on the far left, instead of being opportunity/demand, we're now to the demand aspect of it. Someone is demanding something from us. We had an opportunity that got translated into a demand. Yes, I would like that. Or yes, I need that. And so we need to understand what it is that is demanded of us from the IT department and how we might facilitate that. And we do that, we start that by engaging with various stakeholders. Those stakeholders could be a customer. Those stakeholders should be other IT staff. Those stakeholders should be the business unit, upper management, and the staff that work at the business, and so on. Vendors, suppliers. We engage with any and all stakeholders that have a vested interest in what we're doing to get their feedback about what it is about this demand of something that we need to address and understand. And once we've engaged with all those different stakeholders to get their ideas, to have a fully formed picture of what's really going on and that we need to address, then we jump up here to the plan. Now, this plan definition is I don't want to say it's radical. It's just unusual the way most of us think of planning, I think. And that is a shared understanding by the various stakeholders of the vision of the organization, of whatever the demand is going to be here, the current status of what we're doing, and then what's the improvement opportunity that we need to do to meet that demand. And that to me is a huge shift. I spend a good bit of time in class helping them understand and the consulting work that I do with people on what exactly we mean by plan, getting that shared understanding so we're all on the same page with each other. You're not off here and I'm not off there and we both misunderstand what we're thinking. That only leads to distrust and mistakes and not anybody being satisfied with the result. Once we have a plan and we know where we're going and we all approve it, we understand what's going on, then we move into something called design and transition. And this is where we get into the nuts and bolts of how we're going to do what we need to do. We want to understand all the ramifications, all the criteria, all the constraints. If we're going to be using a piece of software, what's going to be its pluses and its minuses, what security issues with it, et cetera, et cetera. And as part of that design and the transition to the live environment, ultimately, we need to understand, can we go out, do we need to go out and buy things, obtain them, or can we build them internally? Do we have the resources internally? And this is a whole activity in and of itself, understanding where we are and where we might need to go get stuff. But all of this is focused as part of the transition to getting us to the delivery and support of those products and services to deliver the value proposition. The day in and day out work, delivery and support of those products and services, the things that we use to get us to value. Now, there's one last aspect here. After we've been delivering that value for a while, or maybe pretty quickly thereafter, Is there anything we need to improve? Can we get better? Based upon the metrics of what we've seen so far, how do we get better? All right, now that was all very theoretical. So let's take some couple of real world examples. And the phrase we're going to use here in regard to the service value chain, it's at the core of the service value system. The service value chain is we're going to talk about a value stream. We're going to go from that demand on the left, flow through all these activities, all or some or part of it, whatever, to try to get to that value proposition over there on the right. I want to add as much value as I can. Any of my students that I work with, whether it's for a business or it's the ones that are trying to change their career, what value can I add to them to move them along in their career? And I think about this whole service value chain anytime I'm delivering a class. So what I want to do is give you a setup here of something and I actually use this example in my classes because I love this. There's a lot of things I can do with it. And there's actually something in the real world that I encountered. So it's not something I made up. A lot of times we use made up examples, but this is real. Lydia. Lydia is actually the wife of a very dear friend of mine, a childhood friend. I grew up playing Little League with him. He was much better than I was. And then we got into high school. We were fast high school chums we had a whole group of people that we did athletics together, sports together. And I have kept up with Carlos ever since. And we still will go out to dinner regularly. Well, Lydia, his wife, has an interesting job. I have been compelled by some of the things. It might not sound interesting to you, but she is the supervisor of the crossing guards for a school district here in the greater Houston metropolitan area. That school district has 5 high schools, all of the requisite junior highs and elementary schools that would feed into that. And she oversees as a supervisor for over 300 crossing guards across the district. And one of the interesting things about Lydia, and this just, I find her engaging, is she will actually, probably about once a week, actually go out and cover a crossing guard's duties for the morning or the afternoon. And I'm looking at her when she first told me this, I'm like, are you nuts? You oversee 300 people and you go out and do their job once in a while? She says, yeah, I love it. I get to see the kids. I get to meet with the parents. I get to see what the crossing guards are having to do on a day in and day out basis to keep me grounded. And I also then spend some time with the principal and the administrative staff and whatever the school that it is. Except the reason why we're going to talk about Lydia is because one time when Lydia was out being a crossing guard, she got hit. She got hit, and the phrase just went completely out of my head. It was not a drive-by, that's the wrong thing. A hit and run. The driver drove off, and nobody was savvy enough at that moment. They were also shocked by it. And of course, everybody's scared. You got kids that might have been hit as well. Nobody thought to get out their phones to take that picture real quick. So the driver drove off, no accountability here. Well, the school district ate this. They ate the insurance premium adjustments that had to occur. They ate her rehab time. She had 2 or 3 surgeries on her hip and her knees. She was out of pocket. They had to have somebody fill in for her because there were times when she couldn't do her job. And then if any of y'all are over the age of 40 and you've had an accident or an injury, you know rehab, it's going to take a long time. I got injured when I was a young kid, when I was like 20, and I back on my feet real quickly. And then I had an injury after I was 40, and it took me forever. I'm still recovering from it quite a few years later, where I'm still trying to get my body back in groove. Well, she spent a lot of time on rehab. And so she came with this bright idea, and I think it is a bright idea. How about body cams for the crossing guards? So that when someone does drive off, we've got them on tape. And so she thought up this idea of these body cams. We see it with police all the time nowadays. Okay? Why not with the crossing guards? Little side note here. Lydia gave me some statistics on crossing guards, injuries, and death. The numbers are outrageous. So if you're one of those people that, when I retire in a few years or down the road, I think it'd be cool to be a crossing guard, to go out, help the kids, be young, help out at the school, earn a little money, whatever, or maybe volunteer. And oh my gosh, you better know what you're getting into. It's dangerous. The numbers are staggering. So Lydia goes to the school board with this great idea of the body cams. She says, this would be great. And the school board shot it down. And the reason the school board shot it down, and I've talked to her about this, is she really just went in thinking it was a great idea, made a pitch, and didn't really justify it much beyond it's a great idea. It's intuitively obvious to her. But the school boards obviously have an advantage their budget. We're not going to spend that money because this ain't cheap. For 300 people to have body cams for them, we're talking some chunk of change. So what I talked to Lydia about, and I now discuss in my classes, is how could we have used the ITIL version 4 framework, in particular the service value chain, to have accomplished this, to have made this a reality, to add the value that those body cams would have provided. And it starts with Lydia having this demand proposition and understanding she wants body cams. The IT department, and she would need to reach out to them, because if you're not familiar with how body cams work, first off, they're generating a ton of data. Those videos, that's a ton of data. They got to be stored somewhere. They got to be communicated across the network of the organization. There's a lot of IT involved in body cams. So ideally, the IT department would have allowed her to reach out to them. Thus, they engage with her. They engage with her on what's going on. As I mentioned earlier, engaging is with stakeholders. And there are a lot of different stakeholders. Now, on the left-hand side here of these examples I'm going to give you, I'm going to stream through some of the various practices just to kind of give you an idea. This is not an all-inclusive list. It's just some of the big ticket practices that would be involved. And in particular here, with the engage will be something called relationship management as well as supplier management. Supplier management obviously would be their external vendors. We'll engage with them about the body cams and what it's capable of doing. But the relationship management here, the IT department, after talking to Lydia, is going to need to reach out to the school board before they ever present anything to them. And the superintendent of the schools needs to reach out to some of the crossing guards to get their input, not just Lydia's, theirs as well. And then other IT staff. Great. And once we've gathered all this information, have an idea, then we put together that plan. And we go to the school board to pitch it with the real, honest to goodness, hardcore business case. Make the case. And in particular, something called service level management would be involved in helping make that case to the school board about the benefits of this. Now, when I had my conversation with Lydia, when we actually sat down, we had dinner and then it just kept going. They came over to the house and she and I really got it. And my wife and Carlos, her husband, they looked at us and they walked away. They were just like, we went to the kitchen and they just were chatting like crazy. And so Lydia and I went through this. We estimated, based upon what I know about the technology and what she knew she needed, we did the raw numbers on a cocktail napkin, basically, that she was looking at about a 2-year return on the investment, basically, a payback period. That's actually pretty good. So when they pitched it to the school board, theoretically now, have they pitched it to it? Most likely the school board has seen the savings in insurance premiums potentially, the savings in rehab, the ability to recover costs to also then get criminally indict whoever might have done this potentially that hit her and others. Also using these as training videos. They would have approved it potentially. And that would then take us into the design and transition aspect of this. And this is where we're going to start involving things like change management or something called change enablement, service design, and release management. We're going to understand all the ins and outs of this. How do the uploads work? What's the naming convention we're going to use for all these videos? Where's the database storage going to be, et cetera, et cetera? What's the network traffic involved? All the different constraints and criteria that goes into this now at a very nitty-gritty level so that we can then transition it into the live environment, deploy these body cams. Now, before we do that deployment, we're going to also need to do the obtain/build, which is going to involve supplier management again, as well as something called deployment management potentially, and others. But it's all focused on us ultimately getting out the door these body cams so they can be delivered and supported to the crossing guard agents. And then we'll be using something called the service desk for the ongoing support of that product and service, the body cams, and all that's engaged in that, and adding value to the organization, in this case, the school district, to ultimately save money. Now, one last aspect about the stream of value that we're working through here. Again, what I've laid out here with these numbered items here is a value stream of activities we're going to flow through. There's going to be a lot of under, these bullets, more steps. But what if we discover in the course of using these body cams that when the morning shift is done and they put the body cams back at the charging station at the principal's office, and it then automatically uploads to the database servers in the background, that we discovered that the network traffic associated with that might be a little bit more than we were expecting. Well, we need to then look to improve the situation by using something called a continual improvement again, where we look to see, okay, can we offload this for after hours? We're choking out the teachers' use of the network. We're choking out administration. Can we delay this until nighttime during an off-peak period? And that would be an improvement to further add more value. Cool. A stream of value through here. The list of practices I've given you over on the left there would be a subset. There would be a lot more involved with each step along the way. Different parts of the IT department would be involved at different times. Different staff would be involved. Some would be involved all the way through. Others only at one particular point. But it's all in the name of understanding that demand and ultimately providing the value that demand wants us to do. Again, going back to our definition of service, a means of enabling value. Okay. So let's take something a little bit less complicated and a simple incident where something breaks, like an application crashes when a user's using it. So we're going to have a different value stream now through the service value chain. A user calls up and says, it's broken, it's not working. That's the delivery and support aspect of this. And because they're calling up, we're now talking with a stakeholder, a user, it's also engaged. And that's going to be our service desk. The user calls up, they're going to talk to the service desk. Well, our job here is to try to figure out what's going on. And then in that delivery and support of that product and service, try to look to fix it so that it's no longer broken. And that's going to be something called incident management, especially. So incident management may have to obtain / build some things to fix it, or maybe we just reboot the computer, whatever it is, so that hopefully we bring the system back up and running, the user can go back to work, and we've added value. Not a terribly complicated value stream through the service value chain. But we're not done, potentially. Our goal in incident management is to bang, bang, let's go, quickly get things back up and running. We want the user to get back to work, restore their system so they can get back to doing what they're supposed to do, to add value to the organization that they do. But in the background, we want to go further with this. We want to take a look at what caused that system to crash. And as a part of the improvement mindset, try to look for ways to improve the situation. What can we do to prevent this? If we've got 5,000 users, only one of them had this crash, we have 4,999 other people who might experience the same thing at some point down the road. Can we head that off at the pass to improve the organization? So we have two practices in particular, something called problem management and something called, again, continual improvement, to look to see what can we do to prevent this from ever happening again. So now we're going to kind of go back through the value stream again. We might do some re-engagement. We might do some additional obtain and build. We're probably going to have to go up to design and transition for sure to make sure whatever we're doing, the criteria of it is all met. We understand the constraints. And we then deploy a patch maybe to fix this permanent for everybody else so nobody else in the organization experiences this. Thus adding value from the opportunity costs of all those failures down the road. A value stream. Maybe going through this several times. All right, I've got one last example of a value stream, and that's going to be where we are updating some app or adding some functionality of some kind. So nothing's broken here. It's not something brand new. We're going to fix and make something a little bit better. Now that word transition here is going to be important in the middle of the graphic as part of the service value chain. Transitions, we basically have three types of transitions. Something brand new, like those body cams. Something modified, like the patch we did to fix the incident of that application crashes. Or where we remove something, we get rid of it. A removal of something is a transition. We're no longer going to have, we're going to transition out of the organization. Well, whether it's something new or modified or removed, we still have to plan all this and think through all this and design it and transition it properly for it to be a smooth operation. So let's say, and I heard a noise there. Do we have a question? Am I just rolling here and we're good? Okay. Now, there is a demand for the app to have something upgraded to it. Maybe there's a button that needs to be added to add some functionality to it. Right now, it's doing a great job, but it's just missing that one little thing. So let's add a button that adds some additional functionality. And so in this particular case, that demand is an improvement to the app. And therefore, that continual improvement thing is going to be involved again. For us to make sure we really understand what's happening here, again, engage. Now that engagement, could be just simply the service desk, but it could also be the relationship management at a high level and at a low level. Again, we want to understand from all the stakeholders what it is. Let's not just talk to one person or one group. Let's make sure we understand what everybody thinks. And that's a huge, huge point that ITIL version 4 is really pushing on us, encouraging us to do as part of our framework. Talk to people, engage with them. Come out of the cold, dark server room, right? Exactly. So that engagement will give us a better idea of exactly what this little button should do. Come on, how many times have you had something on your phone, an app, right? And they moved a button on you and you're like, oh, why did they do that? Well, hopefully they had a lot of data behind it that it needed to be moved. If they didn't, they just did it because, well, we need to, we want to, we think it's good. That's not as good. So whatever it is. Now, with an update, we're probably not going to go to plan. Plan's typically much more of a strategic thing. We could, but it might be a little overkill. We're going to go into this design and transition thing again. We need to understand all of the nitty gritty of this app adjustment, this update. And again, we're going to involve change enablement or change management. The service design, again, might be involved. There's a lot of other things that would be involved here for sure, but it's also then going to be a release of that aspect. We might have to go out, obtain or build some of the things. So again, we'll go to obtain / build. We're trying to flow through here to ultimately get to that value proposition, right? At some point, we're satisfied with the way this little update's going to work, that new little button we're going to stick on our app. We transition it into the live environment so they can be deployed. And the delivery and support of it will occur. And again, service desk will involved in that delivery and support. We're going to have some users call up and go, what's that button do? We can explain it to them. Okay. Cool. Again, our product and service, we're adding that value. So as kind of a recap here, I hopefully laid out a little bit of what the framework of ITIL is all about. That way things are looked at or should be looked at as services, more so than just here's your laptop, here's your applications. What's the service we're providing? And then I try to lay out the history of how ITIL has evolved with the changing environments that we all work in. And then I got into the service value system and thus the service value chain as an outgrowth of that. And I gave you 3 different examples here. One of something brand new, the Lydia project, then responding to an incident and how the service value chain would be radically different, but nonetheless, give us the framework to flow through, to have a value stream, to work towards that value proposition. And then finally, the update to the app as a modification that we might want to make, a slightly different value stream. Now, there's a whole lot more of other things that we could look at, but I'm trying to keep it just the big ticket items of what we might look at. So I want to go ahead and open it up now. We've got a few minutes before we're done here. And hopefully that flowed smoothly for you. And we'll open it up now to the question and answer. If anybody's got anything that they like, now you've got a billion more questions to ask.
Awesome. Thanks, Victor. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to take yourself off of mute or just go ahead and drop it in the chat for Victor.
Okay. I have a question, Victor. Hi, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you. All
right. So I read an article recently. I don't know if this has anything to do with this particular chat. However, what's going on with the Department of Defense investing in something in regards to plantation in the near future for this being an IT hub here in South Florida?
That's a fantastic question. I am not as familiar with that as I would probably should be. Again, I'm still kind of trying to orient myself to what's going on in South Florida, being from Houston. I find it a very dynamic place, and that's part of the reason why I'm involved with the New Horizons there in South Florida, and I'm excited about that involvement. What the DoD is doing, and this is true for a lot of organizations, and if you look at like what Microsoft is doing with Azure and Amazon's doing with AWS, Amazon Web Services, they are looking for areas where they need to establish effectively redundancy for their operations. And so I would see, because plantation has been a big place for the DoD, right? There is a air base there, correct?
I believe so.
Yeah. Isn't it like Plantation Air Force Base, or help me out? Some Homestead Air Force Base? No? Okay. My geography is a little sketchy. I got Little Havana down. I got South Beach down. I got Fort Lauderdale down.
Homestead is a raceway.
Right. Okay. So what the DoD is probably looking for there is establishing a data center and all the requisite things that go with that, with cybersecurity and the like. If you have been paying attention lately with what's going on in our general public, right? The Colonial Pipeline being cyber attacked, maybe by the Russians, quite possibly. Vladimir Putin, president of Russia, has said, we're in a cyber war. So the Russians say we're in a cyber war. Apparently, our DoD recognizes that, and they're doing that too. And we might not talk about it as a society of being in a cyber war, but our DoD is very definitely, and I'm seeing a lot of movement. There is a huge emphasis on security. In fact, the class that I'm teaching this week right now is a security class, and I have numerous people in that class from the DoD. One guy in particular, he can't move on in his job until he gets the certification that we're doing in that class. So most definitely, I think that's probably what's going on without me knowing authoritatively. Of course, it might be top secret. If I told you, I'd have to kill you. No.
Right. No, they invested heavily in that plantation area recently to do some business, major business as a hub.
Maybe it's just Florida's a great place to be right now, right? Exactly.
Thank you.
You're more than welcome.
And Jeff actually wrote in the chat that there's an air reserve base in Homestead.
That's what it is. Thank you. Thank you for correcting me there.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff.
I knew there was something there. So just kind of to as the questions are coming in, I've thrown out a lot of conversation here about ITIL, and hopefully you found that helpful to kind of understand the way a lot of IT departments are moving these days. A lot of IT shops are using ITIL in some part or whole. It's something that you work at over time. New Horizons does a lot of this training. I've been doing it with New Horizons globally for the last 15 plus years. And I've done a lot of training. It's been pretty much my area of focus for the last 10 years, especially. And we have had several organizations in the Florida area approach us about some of the training and certification that goes with ITIL. And so we're looking really forward to really ramping up that. That's part of one of the reasons why I got attracted to the South Florida area, because there's a lot of need for it, to be quite blunt. The training and particularly the consulting work that goes on with that.
Yep. Awesome. Thanks,
my pleasure. I was really jazzed about being part of this. And as I dug more into the YouTube channel and the like, this is some good stuff here. I'm excited to have been part of this, and I'm honored that I was allowed to participate. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And we're excited to have you here. And Landy was just sharing his gratitude in the chat. Thanks, Landy, for being here. And then Murray actually mentioned there's much more to, how do I say it, ITIL?
Yes. Some people say ITIL, others will go ITIL, but I've pronounced it for a long time, and that's the way most people do is ITIL.
Okay.
Sorry to step on you there. Go ahead.
Right. No problem. So I love to learn that, actually. ITIL certification in the foundation level, and that is very true.
Yes. There is a foundation certification, and there are a bunch of intermediate higher level certifications that we offer, both in the old version 3 still, but more so in the version 4 of this. And those classes can be really quite engaging, very much from a management philosophy aspect of it, though, most definitely.
Awesome. So do we have any more questions from the audience today for Victor?
Well, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. You did a great job. And
thank you.
Just so everybody is aware, we will be posting this on YouTube. I will be sending a follow-up email with this recording. And Victor, if you want, I can include your email as well.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you. And Monica, thank you for all your help in getting this going and set up.
Of course.
Very, very helpful. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, we're excited to have you back.
This was smooth and seamless.
Awesome. Well, have an amazing weekend, everybody. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you again for our Lunch and Learn workshops.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Have a great weekend.